Every year in the north of Thailand, we have a burning season or a hazy season. This usually starts sort of the middle of February and will last into March and through April until it rains. And at this time of the year, it's a hot, dry season, and what happens in agricultural areas is that farmers will burn their leftover biomass. So after they've harvested their rice or their corn or their maize, they will burn off the excess waste, and this causes a huge amount of smoke and ash in the atmosphere. There's also a lot of dust because it's such a dry time of the year. The amount of dust that's created and generated and stirred up every day is absolutely incredible. And of course, in the city areas, the pollution is worse because of the amount of traffic and industry, and different things contribute to the smoke and the haze all around the north of Thailand. I think during the time that I've been here in the last 20 or so years, it's got progressively worse. And I think partly because there is now more maize and corn being planted in the mountain areas. I talked to the guy that we buy our coffee from, who lives up in the mountain up in Doi Intanon, in a small village just outside the national park. And he's really an amazing guy. I'm going to make a video about him at some point because he's just so interesting. He is totally into regenerative agriculture. So they feed their family. He said during COVID, they didn't need to go out to buy food because they grow enough in their own garden. And he told me recently now he's had other farmers in the area come to him, people that have been traditionally growing rice, and now they're showing an interest to start growing maize or corn because they're being approached by the big companies that want them to plant this crop so that it can be sold back to the big company and it gets used for animal feed. And so what my friend has told them, and he's taken them over to Maijam and up into Mae Hong Son area where a lot of these farmers have already converted from mountain rice to growing maize or corn, and this produces so much waste, it's absolutely incredible. And as this waste is produced and at the end of the harvest, they burn it off. And so this really contributes a lot more to the haze and the smoke in Chiang Mai. And my friend will take them over and show them this is what will happen to your land. And it's just barren, it's bare, there's no trees, everything is just laid waste so that their crops of corn or maize can grow in the open full sun, which is what it needs to produce a good crop. And what he's told me is that these farmers are kind of seduced into growing maize or corn for animal feed because the company that encourages them to do it says that they will buy everything back from them. So it's an immediate cash crop that they know they've got a sale for, whereas in the past they would produce mountain rice, which was basically just for their own consumption, for their family's consumption. But he said that many of them don't understand the costs involved, the cost for buying seed and fertilizer and pesticide and for harvesting and all of the other things. And so it really doesn't actually mean that they come out ahead. So he's encouraging them to go back to their roots and use more traditional means to grow food and to earn a living. It would take some effort, it would take some coordination, but I think the problem of this burning of the maize and the corn, in particular the stalks and the leftover husks, it could easily be turned into biochar or compost. Sure, biochar involves burning, but it's a very, very clean burn when it's done properly, so it's not putting hardly any hazardous material into the atmosphere. Or the other thing that could be done is it could be turned into compost, and both the biochar and the compost would be fantastic for the soil and to help regenerate the soil and therefore then reduce the amount of chemicals and the cost involved. But to do this well, to be able to compost well, it would need to be ground up first with a wood chipper, and these farmers usually don't have any resources to be able to afford such machinery. They do most of what they do manually by hand. But if the government were to step in and put pressure on these companies and enforce a law to make sure that people didn't burn, then this would be a great solution, and it would help the regenerative nature of agriculture to put back into the soil rather than just to burn it off and have it, all of the goodness go into the atmosphere and just create havoc with people's health. it destroys the tourism season in Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai and the whole of the north, because people generally don't want to visit. They don't want to come to a place that's got the worst air pollution in the world during these months. Chiang Mai is the city that peaks often during this time of the year as the worst air pollution in the world, and it's because mainly of the burning. Chiang Mai is located in a valley, it's on a plain, so the air just doesn't move very much. We're blessed down here, we're close to the mountain, and so we get air movement down here. We've had a little bit of rain even the last couple of days, which has been nice, and it has helped to clear the air somewhat. But Chiang Mai doesn't get it that much because it's stuck in the valley. Here we get the air movement, the good wind coming down from the mountain, and it clears the atmosphere. Sadly, there doesn't seem to be much done. Every year the government will tell, oh, there's a burning ban on, and you shouldn't burn this and you shouldn't do this, but generally that's ignored by and large. The governor of Chiang Mai last week apparently was telling people the air's so bad, please stay at home and work from home today, stay inside, don't go out. But this is not really a helpful thing, because people have to work, people have to go out, and I think particularly after COVID, people are sick of being stuck inside and being told to stay at home. So there really does need to be more proactive measures to attack the problem, rather than trying to put it like a band-aid on it, or a non-solution of telling people to stay at home. Or every now and again I've been in the city and seen these sprayers spraying misty water everywhere in the very visible areas in and around Chiang Mai, usually around Taipei Gate. And it doesn't seem to be anything much other than a bit of public relations, because I can't see that it's really doing any good at all. It's really tough for the Thai public to make a stance about this, because the government and the big businesses are so entrenched in it, and it's just the way things are, and it appears that that's very difficult to change. There seems to be a reluctance on the part of the government and the part of the companies involved to be able to want to affect any change. Another thing that causes the smoke, particularly around here, is the burning of the forest. So in the national parks and other areas that are forested, people will go in and light fires to burn off the leaf litter on the ground, because this helps to spawn a particular type of mushroom that's very valuable. Then they'll go in and harvest these mushrooms and sell them off, and they're shipped overseas largely. This appears to be very difficult to combat, because people will go into the forest. I've heard stories that people will be quite stealthy about how the fires are lit, and they'll manage to get out of the area so that's undetected as to who's been lighting the fires. But there are measures in place to help reduce this and to deter it as well. Yesterday I went for a bit of a ride around the edge of the national park and up into the park a little bit, just to see how much burning has taken place, and it was evident that there was some burning. But when I was out riding, I came across a ranger station up on the edge of the national park and stopped to have a bit of a chat. Unfortunately, I couldn't record it, but it was very interesting. They said they were quite happy that all of the fires were out in this area now. I've checked on one of the maps, the fire maps, and it did indicate that there was a location close to here that there was still a fire, but it has since been put out. I went up the hill to have a look, and the direction of where the fire was, couldn't see any smoke at all. So I don't know if the map was a little bit out of date, but these guys did reassure me that there was no fires in the area anymore, but they are out looking. There's also another station close down to the village down here that's been set up, and there's people down there. It's got a very broad view, a very scenic view of the mountains, if you like. And so they're down there looking for smoke on the horizon to see where any of these fires might be cropping up, so that they can deal with them quickly when they do. So it's great to see that there are some measures being taken, but there's still a long way to go to really fix this problem. But it's not all rice and corn that gets burnt off. A lot of the farmers around our region, whether they're farming corn or rice, they'll get herds of buffalo in to graze the fields after they've harvested, particularly in the rice fields. So down here, where there's broad areas of big rice fields, they'll just come and graze the buffalo down here. I met these guys harvesting their corn when I was out for a ride, and they were just cutting it and loading it into the truck. And the corn, obviously, they'll sell, and the stalks and the waste, they will also sell it. They told me that it is sold as animal feed, that it's ground up and then fed to the buffalo or to the cattle. And so they're not burning any of their corn at all. So it is possible, it is practical to do it for them. And this, again, it's just part of the regenerative agriculture that is so good that if it's being eaten by buffalo, the buffalo are going to poop it out, and then I'll buy that to use on my garden. But over on the other side of the mountains, over in the Mae Hong Son district and up north of Maijam, all around that area, it's a lot more difficult because most of the farming there, most of the corn and maize that's grown there is grown on slopes. It's on the mountains. So they can't get tractors in there, they can't get machinery in there, and it's a lot more labor intensive. And at this time of the year in the hot season, it's kind of not surprising that the easiest route to take is just to burn it. And so that's what they do. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of understanding, not a lot of education about how damaging this is to the atmosphere and to so many people's health, and also to the tourism industry, because as I said, it just drives tourists away. People generally don't want to come here at this time of the year, which hurts tourism businesses. But I did read, as I was doing some research for this piece, that there are actually measures being taken, that the courts have actually put in place instruction that the government has to deal with the environmental problem of the air pollution in the north of Thailand. So that's a very positive thing. And let's hope that in years to come that the air quality in Chiang Mai will be clean and pure all year round. There's always hope.